He can't hear us yet, I guess. So,
he's not used to hearing himself described that way.
Yeah, so he thinks we're talking about somebody else. So.
I think we're talking about Judy, who is a pretty face.
Yes, she is.
Thanks, David.
Darren?
Rob?
As you were signing in, we were talking about you. We were enjoying a laugh on you. I said when you signed in, I said there's another pretty face. So
very good. I see.
Are you doing
okay?
Brother
Dave. I'm doing great.
Yeah. Do you know Cameron? I think y'all may have met at a tech leader deal. If not, hey, Cameron, Darren.
Nice to meet you, Cameron. I like your background that you have going there.
Since we're talking about how you stay sane and work from home, I figured I'd throw up the scenery because that's part of the trick.
All right, we'll play a little bit here.
Darren, is everything going okay? You're at the house, right?
Yes, I am actually, for a change.
Yeah. Darren's an essential employee. He's been going to the office most of the time. So, surprised.
Essential.
Yeah, so surprised to see the guitar in the background. So,
you at the office, Rob?
I am. I'm in the conference room. So, Greg. Hey man, you're looking good. I like that Tyler, Texas background.
Yeah, I thought I'd brighten it up a little bit.
That's great. That's great. Well, let me go around and quickly introduce. I'm going to introduce again once everybody gets on. But Cameron's in the blue shirt. Cameron Humphreys. Dave Cannon is the gentleman with the earplugs who's drinking water right now. And Darren Furr is the gentleman with the guitar in the background.
All right.
So you traveled the forest, I think, to join this call here, Greg.
Oh, is that right? Is everyone in the Metroplex?
Yeah, everybody else in the Metroplex. So absolutely.
Okay.
And we got Maynard Honor, man of the hour.
How you doing?
Good, man. Good. How are you doing?
Doing well.
You're looking real good. Let me kind of go around. You know a couple of the folks already on this deal. Got Cameron Humphreys. I'm not sure if you've got his blue shirt. Dave Cannon, who what I'm seeing is above your head, and we've got Darren Furr, who I think you've met at Tech Leader Deals, and Greg Anderson has traveled the furthest. He's our representative from East Texas. So
nice.
So we're still waiting on a couple additional folks here. So. And actually, we're waiting on one person, Jeff Lucas. So give him about a minute, and then we'll start. So, but everything good in your world, Maynard?
Yeah, it is. It's actually really well. Too busy. Very good. Yeah.
Good. That's
working
good.
From home. They expect you to work all the time, I guess. Right? Everybody calls you all the time. You're always in your office.
Yeah, that's one of the things that there's no such thing as an 8-hour day when you're working from the house, so it's a deal where you're not 24/7, but it's that 10-12 hour day as he creeps up on you pretty quick. So, and if just for reference, Maynard Honor's name is Maynard Chuck Honor. In different stints in his career, he's gone by Chuck or Maynard. I think his mother calls him Maynard, but his wife calls him Chuck. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is right.
Okay. So if you hear me referring to somebody as Chuck, we're really talking about Maynard. So
yeah, I'll be guilty as charged.
So, well, hey, we'll give Jeff can join the call when he joins, but I really appreciate everybody making time for this. I know we're kind of going through a continuation of a very unusual time for us. And when we started this kind of lockdown, work from home, kind of in between stage, I made a couple personal commitments to myself. One, I was going to attempt to stay intentionally connected with important folks and all of y'all on the Zoom call are important. And the second thing was to promote meaningful professional dialogue. So I hope that this Zoom call is not like every other Zoom call we have, which is essentially a waste of time, but hey, that we benefit from this call. And I really, really appreciate y'all making time for this. So I'm going to go around and kind of introduce in a little bit more detail all the participants. Maynard Chuck Honor is I've known Chuck for almost 30 years. That seems like that's a long time. So, and he and I both have the gray hair to show for it. But a little bit about Maynard's background: West Point grad, Army officer, veteran. He's a alum of Price Waterhouse, Bank of America, PNC, and Ameresco. Currently, he heads up the software division of Finastra, which is a fintech company in the lending space. But encourage all of y'all to get to know each other. But Chuck is just a tremendous individual with a tremendous family. Cameron Humphreys, I haven't known you for 30 years, but it seems like I've known you for at least 10 years, going back to your days at Neiman Marcus. Cameron recently joined NCR as Executive Director of Software Development. And we haven't talked a lot since he started there, so I don't know, a lot about what's going on there. But prior to joining NCR, he was at Thomson Reuters for 5 years, and prior to that, he spent 14 years at Neiman's. He is a double master's degree earner from the University of Texas, but probably more importantly, his bachelor's degree came from my alma mater's arch rival, Washington Lee in Lexington, Virginia. Great school. So, Darren Furr, the man with the guitar in the background. Darren's a great friend. He's one of those guys that if I have an issue to talk to, he's top of the list, and I really appreciate his fine counsel and listening skills. He's the CIO of C Exchange, and C Exchange is essentially a reverse engineering company in the cellular space. If you go to Walmart and trade in your phone, there's a good chance that your former phone will end up in C Exchange's warehouse where they will sell it through some channel, or if it's not sellable in an environmentally sound way, get rid of it. Darren has been a really active participant in our tech leaders group, and good friend. A couple additional items. You obviously see that he's musically inclined with the guitar in the background. He's also a French speaker and an aficionado of Indian cuisine, which is probably our habit, our shared habit. Greg Anderson, 30-plus year veteran of the oil and gas industry. In 2019, he joined Mewbourne Oil as their chief information officer and moved to Tyler from Plano. So he's still working on his East Texas twang. So give him a few months, to get that down. Great guy. Golfer. Are you a scratch golfer yet?
Oh, heck no.
No, but you're working on it every day, aren't you?
Yeah, I hope to get there, but no, I'm certainly not there.
Okay. Well, let me know when you get there so I can take some lessons. So, and despite his Canadian roots, he's a Cowboy fan. So, and Greg is our representative of the oil and gas industry. I thought that might add a little color to our conversation based on kind of what's going on there. And finally, Dave Cannon. Again, Dave is as good a guy as you're going to meet, and I would encourage everybody to get to know everybody that's on this call. Dave Cannon is the VP of Infinity 3, Executive VP. He's a subject matter expert in all things related to digital transformation and kind of operational excellence. He's about to be published for the third time. He's involved in writing a book on idle. And he has been a consistent speaker on a number of issues at our DFW tech leaders meetings on a monthly basis. And he's just a heck of a good guy and a great moderator. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dave Cannon. I'll shut up and let Dave moderate our conversation.
Thanks, Rob. Good to meet you all and see you all again. So straight into it, because one of the subjects that came up last time was this idea that sitting in the middle of a pandemic, things are working a little bit differently for all of us. And we thought it'd be a good idea to just hear from people on the front line what's going on. What has your experience been? And it put a couple of questions out because I'm very curious, busy writing this book about digital transformation, and it strikes me that most of us are in the middle of this thing, and that many of us have had digital transformation programs accelerate because of it. So I'm very curious to find out, what your experience is, and it's more me just asking questions today and listening to the answers. So I guess first thing is what has been different about this experience? What has emerged as one of the major impressions that you've had going through this? I know, Darren, you are about to submit an essay on the subject to somebody. I don't know. So maybe we can kick off with you. What has your experience been? What are the key factors been that your organization has had to deal with in moving through this?
Well, as Rob quite, I think, succinctly summed up, our core business is very much dependent on retail consumers physically going into brick and mortar outlets to conduct a fairly specific post-sale transaction. And I don't have to explain to anyone on this call why that that amount of foot traffic through retail has been massively in decline, and so has our sort of core channel of business as well. And it's obviously something we don't have a ton of agency to influence or improve. So we've been really kind of refocusing on some other existing lines of business that were less profitable for us, but because they're more omni-channel in nature, meaning both online and offline in their origins, represented part of the business that we felt like we could grow while other parts of our business were stagnating.
Have there been any particular kind of innovations that you've had to implement or work with to get through this?
Well, because we are focusing more on a part of our business that was considered generally less glamorous, if I'm being candid, and certainly less profitable, we are re-examining things about that line of business that were fairly manual in nature, and we're implementing some technologies that are new for us. They're certainly not new on the technological landscape, but we're putting in place more kind of firmware-oriented data extraction events, so that we're kind of collecting records as to the work that we're doing directly from the devices that we're doing the work on. And then the other piece that we've focused a lot on is, and this one's going to be a much longer term initiative, is implementing RFID. I think Rob, again, fairly succinctly summarized what our business consists of. So we do have a warehouse full of inventory that we have to keep track of. And obviously, RFID tags, radio frequency identification, allows us to more quickly kind of get our hands on less globally than you would think. It's kind of more on a microscopic scale, but it still goes a lot more quickly than sort of manual cycle counts. So those have been a couple of things that had this pandemic not occurred, I don't know that we would have really gotten around to.
Last to join, Maynard, what has your experience been?
so I work on software with clients globally. So we have clients in every single continent, and we actually do implementations of our software, with our clients. One thing we've noticed, like really quickly up front, is you figured out pretty quickly whether your business continuity plans worked or not. Because you had offices that were shut, and we have 70 offices globally, and every single one of them we shut down and sent everybody home. So determining if our VPN access was scalable enough to handle, 10,000 employees, we found that out pretty quickly, and we had to scale in some areas. It's not only having some employees work from home, now everybody's working from home. So the bandwidth and what you're doing from a VPN perspective is important. What we learned though quickly is we use Teams. So just the productivity tools where we learned a lot that, you had to make sure that the productivity tools worked well, because you're no longer meeting in the office, you're meeting, everybody just like this. And then Zoom, we're meeting and trying to transact business. I think in the short term, it's okay because have strategic plans. We're running through tactical stuff. When you're not together in a room, it's easy to run tactical. When you're trying to do more strategic work, it's a little harder trying to do through Zoom meetings or, Teams meetings. Also working through clients, making sure we could transact business. So if you have a client needing to sign a contract, do you have everything in place for the client to actually sign the contract, return it to you to transact business? Because all of our clients are working at home now too. And on top of all that, we have to implement our software. We do major banks. For perspective, we had both JP Morgan and Wells Fargo implement major upgrades this past weekend, and they both did it remotely, working with us remotely. So you start learning like new practices because you really think about doing it like that way remotely, but you learn rather quickly and you're replanning to get it done. So I would just say it's just a lot of different communication style. I just got off of a call. I'm a site lead for my Plano office. We played code names. So like at work, we were playing like games we were on a Zoom, but it's just trying to keep the social atmosphere going within the company. So a lot of things like that. So I guess what I'm saying is just communication, interaction between your clients, your internal teams, your office. I mean, we've learned a lot on how to work that better when everybody is like work from home.
What was the biggest surprise for you?
I guess the biggest surprise is the number of meetings that we have. I think everybody's working from home, and everybody's really tired. I mean, you live in your office, and again, when you're like working at home and other people are working in an office, so you may work remotely, it's different. But when everybody works from home, we had people like in India, my India office, I have a couple hundred people there. They have like 2-hour commutes one way. Well, they don't have to do that anymore. And they're on calls. They'll tell you they're on calls longer, and they're just, they're tied. Their computer's always on. And that's one thing I think I learned.
Does that mean productivity went up?
It went up somewhat. I mean, we haven't skipped a beat. I was going to think we were going to have to delay like either deliveries or things won't get done in time. We're not finding that at all. So our productivity at least maintained, even when we have kids screaming in the background or somebody's wife screaming at them in the background or dogs barking or, we've heard a lot like on these calls because you're in your house. It's quite amusing at times, but some little kid will just come up into the middle of the Zoom meeting, right, that you're having, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry." They're like, "Yeah, you're way over that." Now nobody even says they're sorry. I mean, that's just what it is. That's how you're working.
Cameron, what has your experience been?
Oh, I was only about 5 weeks into this new gig when we went home, work from home. So it's been an interesting challenge from that standpoint. But I think the fundamental piece to start with is that the industry that I support is restaurants. Okay, so it's been turned literally upside down, right? And not figuratively, but in the sense that it used to be 10% of the business was digital, online, curbside, that type of experience. And that's 90+% because the restaurants, they, for all intents and purposes, they're closed. Their only avenue for revenue is online ordering and curbside pickup. A couple of leading companies were already kind of down that path and they were able to push the accelerator and go. What's been gratifying is how quickly the rest of the world has caught up to them. They're not just sitting back and being victims. They're aggressively transforming their business. They're utilizing technology to the fullest extent possible. And we've had to react to it. So a couple of examples would be there are restaurants that have 1 or 2 really busy days a year for takeout. For most of the time, people go into the store or they drink the drinks, watch the sporting events, and eat the food, right? And obviously that's not an option. So, but the Super Bowl is kind of a mini version of COVID quarantine because people want to actually have their Super Bowl parties at home. And so the biggest day of the year for one of our top clients was Super Bowl, right? And honestly, we would struggle to meet the demand. Our systems were scaled to that point, but no further. I will tell you, 2 to 3 or 2 days a week now, they're doing 3 to 4x Super Bowl. That's twice a week, every week. Right. And then on busy days, like when the government puts a little extra money in your bank account or it's Mother's Day or NFL draft, there's 6x that. Right. And we had to scramble to meet that demand. And so it's forced us to scale up our systems and to become more capable in that regard. And then also, I think these are not temporary transformations. We're never going to go back to 90-10. We're going to be much more focused on how do we become a digital business. What do we do to minimize the amount of human contact that's required in a restaurant? People just don't want to touch a menu that someone else has touched. They don't want to touch a POS that someone else has touched. So contactless experiences and things that we can do to use automation to get people in and out of restaurants without minimizing interaction and such with people. And then also, I think we're never going to go back to a world where I think we're going to always be in this curbside pickup is going to be a predominant part. And so we pivoted very quickly, built on some, there's definitely some building blocks that were there, but to see the organization pull people off of projects, like anything that affects the in-store experience, don't work on it. Just put your pen down and come on and join us on the digital side. And to see that pivot working in a context in which everyone's working from home. So that's what's changed so dramatically. What didn't change and what's going to cause some long-term, I think, social repercussions, productivity didn't dip. Right? We're an organization that has no tolerance for work from home, right? It's you come in the office 5 days a week or you find someplace else to work. And if we decide that your office, your campus is not going to be part of our strategy anymore, we shut the campus down, we offer reload packages, or you leave. You don't get to work remotely, right? Period. And it's and I believe in that. I think co-location and being in breathing the same air with your colleagues helps you work through problems faster. It spurs innovation. You have insights that you wouldn't otherwise get. I believe all that fervently, as does my boss, as does his boss. How do you go back to the employees now and say, yeah, we really need you to go ahead and make that hour commute each way? We're going to not be flexible about that because we have metrics that shows we're working. We transformed right in the middle of this whole crisis, and I think there's going to be some rethinking that goes on. And even if we're not willing to rethink and we're still dug in our old curmudgeonly ways about the value of working in the office, how do you foster that among your employees and say, yeah, okay, that's great. I don't want to work for you anymore. I'm going to go do something else.
Right. I want to come back to that point a little bit later, but one of the things you talked about was scaling up. Did you find you were scaling up existing systems, or were you having to deploy radically new systems alongside the older systems?
Both, right? Yeah. So partially you can throw hardware at it, but at some point the hardware doesn't scale you up anymore. So it's been a lot of re-engineering aggressively. What do you have to? It's a different mindset. It's what do you have to lose? You know, if you do nothing, you're going to fail. Right. Yeah. So you have to take action. So let's go ahead and push this code release that's not thoroughly tested. Let's do it on a day of the week where it's not as impactful to our customers. And if it works, great. It dropped the confetti. Many times it did. Sometimes we roll it back and we go back and retool. And so the risk profile is dramatically different. We're not judged on necessarily always getting it right. We're judged on taking aggressive entrepreneurial steps, fast failure, and then adjusting and pivoting quickly. It is kind of fun. It's not fun when the rollbacks aren't fun, but the environment, the risk tolerance is kind of, it's refreshing.
Were you already embarking on a more sort of agile way of working in the development side, or is this something that was accelerated?
This really accelerated it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. It's interesting. One of the restaurants, in fact, a couple of the restaurants near me, in addition to the curbside delivery of their standard menu, was offering ingredients. So you go up there and buy a burger raw, like ground beef and buns and, the salad and so on, and assemble your own. And they were selling a lot of that kind of, those kind of ingredients. It's very interesting. What other kind of innovations did you see out in the restaurants themselves?
That is a key point. One of the things that we're seeing is they're changing up their menus. Sometimes right in the middle of a business day where they see demand, they respond to it. So we're, specifically what we're talking about here is instead of selling you a cooked steak, we've got places that are saying, well, we'll sell you 4 not cooked steaks with all the ingredients and fixings in it, right? So you to go ahead and take it home because you want that steak fresh off the grill. We'll do everything else for you, right? And so these are innovations. And, the nice thing about digital, right? You're not printing anything. You put the menu out there. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you come into the next business day and you change it. Yeah. And so I think that's an area where we're seeing innovation. And this is a little bit more speculative at this point, but we're seeing, I think, where the restaurant may become more of a specialized retail store as well. So they're not only going to sell you prepared meals that you can take from home, but they'll use their supply chain to give you access to, small scale, like specialty sausages or certain types of bread, maybe even types of spices that you can't get at the general, even at Whole Foods, and things that they can do to make the interaction more sticky and try to keep that foot traffic going. Because the other side of it is that the restaurants are not open, so they're not able to sell you alcohol. And that is very damaging to the business model. Right? A lot of restaurants break even on food, and it's that bottle of wine that makes the difference between profit and loss.
Okay, I'm conscious of time as well. Greg, we've saved the furthest for last, knowing that the internet takes a while to get to you from Dallas. So what has your experience been out in Tyler?
Yeah, I'm just catching up with what Darren talked about. But no, it's funny. So East Texas, my experience has probably been completely different from all of yours. I jokingly say that out here we're kind of like Sweden. I have not worked a day from home yet. I come to the office every day, so does the rest of the senior leadership team. At most, we've moved to a larger conference room for our Monday leadership meetings where, we've got a chair between us kind of thing. Cameron just mentioned the alcohol. There's a Tex-Mex restaurant here where we can go and get curbside a couple of tacos, and for $35, we can also get a bottle of tequila and margarita mix. So it's just a very interesting dynamic out here. On the topic of how it's changed us transformation-wise, yeah, Newborn, it's an excellent company. It was founded 55 years ago by Mr. Newborn himself. There's a lot of legacy systems within the oil and gas industry to begin with, and they have built a lot of homegrown spreadsheets, things. It's very much work from the office environment. Just like Cameron said, they just work from home is not an option. So it was very transformational for all of a sudden a lot of people that did have to go home. How would our infrastructure hold up? We were just starting to implement Teams on my team, and really it wasn't getting a lot of traction. I think my team had fun playing with instant messaging and what have you. And we went from that to stand this thing up, educate the entire company on how to use it and get using it. And so that was we had to pivot as well and do things that were just not common here at all. Another joke I say is I think Newborn grew technologically 10 years in 4 weeks. We don't use technology like this. When people want to talk to each other, they yell down the hall, they go down the hall, they use email, and they call. Using Microsoft Teams would have never taken off if it wasn't for this whole COVID-19. So
well, I also think, hey, not to interrupt there, also has something to do with the person that's driving the change there. I think 2 years ago, they wouldn't have been as open to using these type of things.
Quite right. There has been some recent change of the guard and different, individuals retiring and things that have opened people's eyes to technology. But the model here is obviously engineering and geoscience, because we're an oil and gas company, and they like to go to specific schools, recruit, the best of the best that they can, and train them the Newborn way. And so there's, coming in with new ideas and fresh ideas. A lot of these people that have worked here for decades, it's completely foreign to them and they're not interested. So it's very difficult to get buy-in for new technologies to get traction. And COVID has really helped to kind of say, turn everything on its ear. Guys, we have to do this. There's no option. And the most surprising thing was how readily they actually took to it. There was no choice, so everybody got on board. That was a pleasant surprise.
So to build on that point and go back to a previous point about what's going to happen after this and people coming back into the workplace. It's only been 2 months really, but it almost feels like there are some practices that we put in place. It feels like they've been in place for years. Zoom meetings, for example. Which of these things is going to stay, and which of these things is going to, when we get back to normal, we'll kind of push them aside again? Yeah, what do you think the permanent changes are?
It's going to be very interesting to see. Definitely a permanent change for us is the video conferencing. They attempted to implement video conferencing a decade ago, and it just did not get traction. Again, right up to Mr. Newborn's thinking was, I want to talk to my guys in the field. I'm going to get on our corporate jet, fly out to the field and talk to them. They didn't really have any use for it. Now it's in most of our conference rooms and they're using it daily and they love it. So I can see the travel part being taken up a lot with video conference instead. But in terms of returning to work, they just can't wait. I mean, I think there's a lot of people here at the senior level of management that wishes we could just do a herd mentality. Let's all get this thing and get it over with and then get back to work. There's not, I sit on another roundtable with 50 other oil and gas CIOs, and when they were all talking about their return to work plans and phases, and some are even saying, you know what, we're completely rethinking our real estate strategy, and we're not going to renew some leases, and we're going to have this whole, work remote from home. This has just been so successful that we're going to build on it. And from my leadership's perspective, we're not wasting 5 minutes discussing it. It's when people can get back to the office, they will get back to the office.
I don't know about anyone else on this call, but so I was very much of the same mindset that Cameron spoke to when he was talking about his leadership team's attitude towards work from home, especially when you come from an environment that is so fluid and agile and fast paced. I just, having to wait for somebody to pick up the phone or get on a Zoom when you could just walk over to their office just would have been anathema 10 years ago. But by the same token, I can say as long ago as 10 years ago, for me, I was losing out on high quality development resources to other companies that offered work from home as a perk. And so we resisted it right up until the pandemic. And really the people that we had on the team were people that were comfortable coming into the office or willing to accept coming into the office 5 days a week. But now that we've not gone 100% work from home, we've been, I would say, kind of more 50%. But yeah, I mean, as I'm sure they say in East Texas, Greg, there's no getting that cow back in the barn. I can't fathom, I mean, and it is, I mean, I can already tell, and we're able to sort of self-govern if you've got, and I'm fortunate to obviously fortunate in this regard to manage a small team as opposed to a fairly large one, like I'm sure Maynard does and some of the rest of you. But when you've got a small team, you can self-regulate, and if you've got responsible team members, then you can say, all right, it makes sense for this person to work from home tomorrow and then come in on Wednesday. That makes it it makes a lot more sense. But yeah, I can't fathom that I'm going to be able to mandate, as per what Cameron said, that, yeah, no, you gotta be here 5 days a week. I mean, you can't justify it because it has not been an impact to productivity.
So one of the questions that has come up has been, we hear of a number of layoffs and organizations shedding layoffs or furloughs. I know, Rob, you were talking about, we discussed this a little bit earlier, you're actually seeing an uptick in some of the hiring that's going on in the region.
Yeah, I'm kind of seeing what I'd kind of refer to as a mixed bag. I've got several clients that are continuing to, I can't tell anybody that's burning down the highways to hire folks, but there's certain folks that are proceeding in an intentional manner, that are interviewing, and they're proceeding cautiously. I've got a few folks that I think are probably hiding under their desk or their home desk in a fetal position, not knowing which way's up, type of thing. And I'm also hearing this term furlough, which is different than a layoff. Technically, different than a layoff, but I'm not sure, qualitatively how it's different. The people have been told you're furloughed rather than being laid off, but there's not a specific date of return. I guess that means that, hey, you're being temporarily laid off, but you're eligible to restart within the organization. So, I mean, there are a lot of mixed messages out there. I also think I'm seeing, hey, you're really good employees that were really good working from the office. I mean, I think that we need to force the issue and tell them, hey, this work will stay till tomorrow, because they're working 10, 12 hours a day, not leaving their desk. And, your really good folks are getting the job done. And I worry about burnout, because there's no, when you go to the office and you go out for lunch, Taco Bell, and then you leave at 5:30 or 6 or whatever, there's this natural demarcation. It's like, hey, people don't know whether it's morning, noon, or night, because they're working from their house, and just continuing to plug, and there's always a lot of work to do. So that's from a human capital. Hey, I think it's really important now more than ever to hire people that are self-managed and have good judgment and understand what quality looks like. So.
And that comes back to something you said, Maynard, earlier as well, about people working much longer hours, even though they don't have to commute much, or maybe because they don't have to commute much. It seems from everybody, Darren, what you just said as well, people wanting to work from home as a kind of perk to the job. Although Cameron, you're saying that is just not going to happen when things get back to normal, because it's a necessary part of the way that you guys work. It seems that, though, there is a kind of shift in culture that has happened over these last 2 months. Is that fair to say? And what is the new working culture going to look like? What do we have to deal with? How do we have to attract talent, and how do we manage these? Darren, you were saying you have a small team, so you can kind of regulate what they're doing, but you know, if people are going to expect to work more from home and be on a longer leash, how do we manage in those kind of environments? It's quite a challenge. I mean, are you seeing the shift in culture? Do you think it's going to stick?
I think there's agreement. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? The work from home is going to be part of the new reality. Maybe not 5 days a week. I don't think it will be.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you've told employees for years you have to be in the office in order to achieve peak productivity. And then in the moments of greatest need, employees have stepped up and really helped you transform the organization and continue to keep things moving through the pipeline and keep your customers going from home under really ugly circumstances. So it's kind of burst the bubble, right? Now, I think there are many, the flip side I'll say is, yeah, we're all working longer hours. I'm working longer hours partially because it's less productive at home, right? I can't walk across the hall. I have to wait 15 minutes for someone to get on a video conference, which is kind of dead time. And those 5 and 10 minute hits add up. And so, yeah, I got to put in 10 or 12 hours a day to get the productivity I used to get out of 8 or 10. I think that's fair. But no, I don't think we're putting the genie back in the bottle. I think that's something that if folks think that we're going to be old school 5 days a week in the office, no ifs, ands, or buts, I think they may be in denial.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're going to see more work from home, but I will say I don't think we're going to see total work from home for 2 reasons. One is, you know, we have corporate cultures, and all of us, you know, I worked for several institutions, you did too. I mean, the only way you get into really a corporate culture is by going into the office. And I know people that have always worked from home, but I can tell you most of them don't get into a corporate culture. Or the only way they get into is they go into on-site training, you know, like 2-week training sessions, and they meet people and things like that. But so that's one. I think people will work more from home, but you're going to see people go back into the office. As you said, from a managerial perspective, you can just talk to people throughout the day and get your job done. Now you're having to like put in 15-minute increments on a calendar, or try to get somebody on a Teams meeting. The other thing I would say is we're benefiting right now of the productivity, benefiting having had everybody in the office and having done the strategic work and whatever you did prior. Like, I know for us, we did strategic work in the office. We worked together. We know who people are. So now we're working at home for like the last 60 days, but we know who people are because we were in the office together. We know the strategic plan because we sat in the office together and worked out the strategic plan, and now we're just executing that. I think when you get back to those things, you're really going to have people back together in some kind of place to get those types of things done. But again, just as you're saying, I don't think it's going to be 5 days a week anymore.
I also wonder if some of the fact that we're not seeing a loss in productivity, and again, speaking only from my own experience, but it sounds like also certainly in the case of Cameron, this might be happening, is that I feel like our employees are stepping up because of the unique circumstances, so they know the pressures that this is putting on us as a company, and everybody gets kind of caught up in the drama of the moment, and oh my God, people are dying. And so there really is almost like, I feel like there's almost a heroic spirit with at least some of our team members. And I wonder, you know, if we did try to sustain this on a 5-day a week back into normalcy, whether we wouldn't begin to see a decrease, because naturally, right, it's not going to be as unique and special and won't be quite the sense of urgency. But that's speculative on my part. I don't know. I guess one thing I'm curious about, Cameron, do you feel like, assuming we ever do come back to a state of equilibrium in your space specifically, how much of the agility and fast pace that your organization has taken on during this, do you think some of that will stick around as you guys move back into kind of more of a static environment?
Like the candle, I hope so. More fun this way, like I said in one of the earlier comments, right? When you pull out some of the risk or some of the accountability for any kind of downtime, you say, well, accept that risk. It's more fun to take the chance and to move things along. You know, if our engineering were a little bit more sophisticated, we could be taking those risks without taking those risks, right? don't yet have blue-green deployments. We don't have that level of software-defined infrastructure. We're still doing things with old school infrastructure. So hopefully we can pull some of that mindset in and have the fun without the downside. We have to. If we don't, we'll be out of business, frankly, right? And it's just going to be table stakes.
But do you think your customers are going to become addicted in any way to these kind of faster release cycles, even with the downside of the potential rollback?
Good. I don't think so. I think they're going to be more interested in the stability and scale. And the other piece that I think they're going to be interested in is anything we can do to improve their cost structure. We're already seeing interest in they want to offload this stuff. They want to sell hamburgers and French fries and beer, right? They don't want to be in technology business. So we need to be not be a software and a technology provider, but we need to deliver a service. Technology is simply how that service is delivered. And I do think that shift will accelerate. They're not going to hire back all these people. It's going to be more automation, more technology, more digital, less human beings in there. And that probably raises all kinds of questions about where these folks are going to find their next job. And I think COVID's accelerating that. We're seeing it right now.
Right. Well, Rob, we've kind of heading towards the 5:15 mark, which is our wrap-up time. So shall I just hand back to you?
Well, I was going to say, do we want to spend another 15 minutes or so and kind of cut this off at 5:30? Do folks have, or are there any time constraints? Someone's got to go.
I'm good.
I'm good.
5:30 myself.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm good.
All
So
right, let's go to 5:30, and I'll cut us off at 5:30. But again, I think this dialogue is going great, and hey, it's except for Maynard, everybody's got such a pretty face. I'm enjoying kind of, yeah.
Nice. So I had a question, Cameron. You mentioned supply chains, and this seems to be one of the things that would be dependent on most, whether it's getting groceries and toilet paper to the local store, or whether it's getting food to the restaurants, which we've all been depending on. That must have been a huge demand. And has the supply chain changed because of this? Have they had to, deliver greater varieties of things to more frequently? What's been the pressure on supply chain?
I think it's been the opposite.
Yeah.
All this food is half of the food that's produced in the United States. I want to put a big caveat on this one. I'm a technologist. I'm not a restaurant expert. Everything I've learned in the last 6 to 12 weeks or whatnot, I've just picked up very recently. But interesting statistic, it's over half of the food that's produced in the United States is intended for restaurant consumption, not grocery stores. Okay? Over half. Let's call it half, right? When you shut that down, right, there's plenty of food, but if you've seen restaurant portions, it's not something that ordinary consumers can take advantage of. You can't, right? You don't want a 50-pound block of butter, and you can't repackage it effectively. So a lot of that food, I think we've all seen pictures of milk going down the drain and animals unfortunately being slaughtered and buried, right? So the supply chain to the restaurants, any restaurant that's willing to take a shipment gets it. But they can't do anything with it, or their volumes have come way down. I would maybe pivot to the other side, though, and one of the reasons the NCR was out in front of this disease was because of our technology supply chain. We were really managing this in February as a threat to, we're not going to have hardware to put in stores because the supply chain coming out of China is upside down. And then that's what caused us to spin up all these task force to prepare for that. And then about 2 or 3 weeks into these task force, someone said, well, wait a minute, this is going to hit the United States, not just China. We need to be prepared for it. And so that, I think, gave us a little bit of thought leadership on this. And so we started doing work from home drills and getting all this stuff done. And I remember these emails going out in late February, early March. I'm like, this is a CYA risk management mitigation check the box activity. There is no way any of this is going to be implemented. Stamp the idiot right on my forehead because it all happened. But the other piece, though, it's affecting software because our software and hardware are commingled. It's actually giving me a little bit of relief on some of our new stuff coming down the pipeline because I can ship the software all I want. There's no hardware to go with it. Right, the hardware is not likely going to drop it's been disrupted by 4 to 6 months. And so on that side, it's actually giving me a little bit of air cover. Like, I wanted to ship. but the hardware wasn't there.
Is that POS hardware, Cameron, or?
Yeah, especially the next generation of mobile POS hardware. So the stuff, that stuff's all it's all new, it's all really exciting, and it's all really not in the United States, right?
I have a question for Maynard. I think last time we saw each other in person at the illustrious Addison Treehouse, you mentioned that, if I'm not mistaken, you guys had just signed a deal with some Chinese banks, one of your first deployments over there. They've obviously been at the center of a lot of this drama. Has it in any way impacted those projects or relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did sign our first Chinese client in November of last year. I actually was supposed to be on the ground in China in February, so I didn't go.
Oh, wow.
Which was like early March. I was asked to go to Milan too, of all places, so I didn't go there either. But yeah, and we've had to work with actually the group that we're working with is based out of Beijing. We've had to work with a team that couldn't get back to Beijing, so they were in Hong Kong. But yeah, we're having to work remotely. We were supposed to do an on-site, again, two companies getting together, do an on-site project over 2 weeks to kick off the project. You know, the project's going to last like a year and a half. And we've had to learn to move it forward remotely. Again, using just like we're doing here, Zoom. We have sessions where everybody's on and having to move that forward. So where something like productivity is continuing to move forward at a constant pace, projects like this, they actually we had to put more people on it, get more effort involved because we were operating in that, not in person. In person, you could operate a lot easier and get things done. And we were operating off of different time zones. So I had people in, Beijing, Hong Kong, Bangalore, and London all working on it. So, but it is moving forward, and we're doing things remotely. But when it comes time to do the first basic install of the software, because they're not on the cloud, they're doing it on-prem. We're going to have someone land there and load it into Beijing. And our travel's been cut. So we're a global company. We were spending, who knows, our sales team is spending millions, tens of millions of dollars on travel. Went to zero. No one's allowed to travel. So everybody has to stay in place. You have to work with clients. The other thing I will tell you, we're used by, I'm in commercial lending. We're used by most major banks across the globe, including here in the U.S. So JP Morgan, Wells, Bank of America, Citi, U.S. Bank, SunTrust, they use our software. They all had to try to deliver $700 billion of payment protection loans. So I look at the restaurants, right? From a restaurant perspective, some restaurants were trying to get some of that money. Some of them had to give it back, but the payment they had to try to get $700 billion through the Small Business Administration pipeline, and it had to be done digitally, if you think about it, right? So banks had to set up quick digital platforms to take on applications, special applications, and then work through with a remote workforce. If you think you would just have a quote unquote war room, right, where you bring everybody to run through those from a technology perspective and figure out something and get it done. Now you had to do everything remotely. So technology really became in play with all these banks to receive decisioned applications, and then get money sent out to everybody that requested payment protection loans. And now we have Main Street Lending. Canada has a program, UK has a program, Australia has a program. So everybody's having to, again, it's all about digital. Everything that used to be, I think about the restaurants, one of my classmates was CIO of IHOP for a while, and they were coming up with this whole, delivery, online, you could order online, get it delivered. And for a while, I did think, by the way, why are they doing that? But now, I mean, if you didn't have that to start with, if you had no remote delivery capability, I mean, you were probably hurting in a bad way over the last 60 days. But even in banking, we're seeing digital, where you have to work not only digitally because you're all spread out, the bankers, but your clients are also spread out. You're not meeting with them, shaking their hand, giving them a loan. You're having to do it over some kind of technology. And then they have other fraud issues and everything going on with that. But yeah, it is changing how we're looking at doing business. And I think it'll streamline and make us overall, like, worldwide, it'll make us more efficient in how we transact certain types of business.
Greg, I wanted to ask you, in addition to the whole COVID situation, the whole oil and gas industry was hit with a pretty severe price cut. How's that impacted you with these two things coming your way?
Yeah, tremendously, obviously, for the whole industry. It's the two are mutually exclusive in a sense, because we had to take whatever action we would take, regardless of COVID, because of the downturn. So it's mostly shutting in our production and minimizing our active drilling. So, trying to keep everything in the ground essentially. But I think the only real impact where the two collide is that you've got a mentality like we have here, let's call it Sweden, and then we're working with companies like Halliburton, Schlumberger's, who send all their people home. And so now we're dependent on a lot of service companies that have, a completely different attitude towards COVID, and that's impacting us definitely in a way that we weren't expecting. So that's been hard. That's been the hardest part to deal with, is how other companies are reacting to COVID and how's that impacting us getting our work done. So
right.
It's definitely been tough. For us too, the supply chain of, we're all sitting here on a video conference, and I know myself, I'm using a little Logitech C920 camera that I had from my previous employer. Here we had none of that. And boy, they're like vaporware. You cannot find them anywhere now, because that was the first thing, I put in video conferencing rooms for my leadership team, but they're all, hey, can I get a camera? It's like, sure, if you can find one. If you want to pay $300 on eBay, go ahead. But
wow,
yeah, it's just getting that type of equipment is impossible.
That's interesting.
I see Judy's online, and I know you're on mute, Judy, and that you're kind of providing a lot of service there. But your entire business is focused on online marketing, sales, advertising, etc., etc. What has your experience been? What trends are you seeing?
Well, I'm seeing that people are becoming less worried about what they look like and more concerned about, the content. It used to be very hard to get people on a Zoom call. What you guys are doing was virtually impossible a couple of months ago. And now we're all having a little bit much of this, but I think that what I'm seeing is a real focus right now on content, and content that is really useful. Not just, noise out there, but the people that are creating content that is thought-provoking and educational. Those are the people that are going to succeed. And there's an article I read, and I think Rob shared something about it. It's really about people that are positioned, that are strategically positioned, are the ones that are going to rebound the best. The ones that are in fear and panicking and frozen, they're not going to make it. They're just not going to make it. And so it's like, how do you position yourself and your company in a strategic way, and look at like what solutions do you have to what problems that are out there, and then connect the dots. So that's what I'm seeing.
What are some of the most innovative things that you've seen people doing, like on LinkedIn, for example?
There's one of my colleagues now is doing this thing that I absolutely love. He's a content expert, and he's doing these things called wine and webinars. And basically he's teaching his audience how to do what he does. And what happens there is you realize, man, this is complicated. So Andy, I'm going to hire you instead of doing it. So it's an interesting way of selling. It's by selling by example. It's like, you know, a lot of people are hesitant to let you under the hood and see what you do. But when they do see that, they may realize, wow, that's really complex. You know what? I'm really good at what I do. You can do this for me. I'm willing to pay you. So that's what I find is the people that are willing to share that are the ones that are doing well, because people want to hire them to do it.
All right. Well, we're heading right up to that 5:30 hour there. Thanks very much, everyone. I've been making copious notes over here. A lot of what I thought was happening, and a lot more than that. This has been very educational for me. So thank you all for that. Rob, let me hand back to you.
Yeah. Hey, Dave. Thanks for doing this. You're such a great facilitator and moderator of a variety of conversations over beer and not over beer. So, and gentlemen and Judy, I really appreciate your time this afternoon. I hope this was fun. I hope this was eventful. I hope there's a little encouragement. I mean, one of the things I heard that was great is that, hey, employees are appreciating having a job, and they're stepping up, not just in terms of effort, but they're stepping up and thinking through things and being innovative. And there's a certain amount of enjoyment associated with, hey, we're making a difference here. So I hope this call was fun and it made a difference in your week. And I really, once this is over, I want to see all of you all face to face, you know, so, and I'll drive out to East Texas to play golf with you, Greg. So
yeah, you're all welcome. Actually, it's been really fun for me too, because like I said, I sit on a roundtable with 50 other oil and gas CIOs, so we all kind of know the same talk. But to listen to what you guys are going through in completely different verticals is really interesting for me. So I appreciate being a part of it.
Well, very cool. Hey, just a little advertising for next week. This same time next week, John West is who I think everybody on this call, I think with the exception of Greg, knows well, is going to make a presentation on cryptocurrency. It's kind of an extension. He made a presentation in November. So that's our tech leaders event for the month. And I think that will be fun and eventful as well too. So love for y'all to participate. And if you haven't gotten an invite, you know, reply back to Judy and she'll send you an invite. So, you know, have a great week. I really appreciate everybody making time for this. This was really super.
Thanks for setting it up, Rob.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Nice to meet everybody.
Thanks everyone.
Absolutely.
Great meeting everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Cameron. Take care, my friend.